next, board communications. I'm gonna start out this one because many of us attended MASB last month. And we often try to split up so that we can go to as many different sessions as we possibly can and cover more ground, rather than all of us going and hearing the exact same thing. So I thought it might be nice if we each gave a brief report out on what maybe it is we learned in one or two of the classes or breakout sessions, so that everybody else can hear some of the things that were talked about and that we learned at the session. So I can just go first because I already got my microphone on. One class that I attended was one called Data Dashboards, which was a class about how to make some of our data more easily accessible and understandable for people in the district. So like we have the budget transparency icon on our webpage, but sometimes that can be difficult to understand and there's lots of pages of stuff to go through. There's the Michigan school data, and that can be, I've tried using that a million times and it can be really difficult to try to figure out how to get to use that. So this was a sort of a class about different ways that we can share data in an easily accessible way on the website, both for internal use and for external use for community members. So, you know, you can just sort of say, you know, hey, this is a goal that we have in our district and, you know, it's got a number attached to it or something like that. And you could put it on there and show your progress as you go along and how that changes over time. You know, and our district uses tons of data. I mean, we heard about it today with the data that they do in the WIN program. I mean, and everything that is done in this district has data that goes behind it and feeds into the information that is used to be able to make adjustments and make changes to make sure that everybody is learning and happy. So, you know, like you could have reading goals and say, this is what our goal is for, say, like 3rd grade English, and then you implement a program and go, all right, well, now how is our reading going based on that? You know, just to have certain simple things that are being worked on in the district and show how initiatives that are being implemented to try to help further things along, see what kind of impact they have. Just being able to have that out there, you know, it doesn't have to be pages. We looked at some other schools that had data dashboards, and it was really neat to just be able to see, you know, some very simple ways you could do that to put stuff out there to make it a little bit more accessible and transparent for everybody. And then I also went to a breakout session on the role of the school board in educational design, and I thought that this one was particularly timely given all of the bond work that we have going on. And really my main takeaway on this class was that should always make sure that the architects and construction groups and everybody that's involved is always going back to sort of what it is, what they're proposing aligns with the school district's vision and mission. You know, sort of always going back and looking at it and going, all right, we're recommending this and we're recommending that. Does that actually, like, all right, let's take a step back. What are our goals for this building or this field or whatever the case may be? And is it, you know, is it the vision's to create a flexible and collaborative space? Okay, well, is that what we're doing with the money? Is that how it's playing out, or do we need to take a step back and go, oh, wait a minute, I like what you're doing here, but it doesn't seem to fit with what our goal is for, you know, 21st century education or whatever the case may be. Just to always, you know, keep everything in the vision in mind, and, you know, sort of that's sort of the school board's 30,000 foot level. So something for us to sort of keep in mind as all of the bond projects go forward is to always just look and say, is that hitting the intended goal? So those were 2 of the many, many sessions that I went to when I was there.
All right, well, as vice president, I will follow that one up. So I know that you were there a good day longer than I was, but I also attended 2 classes, and I, of course, attended all the breakout sessions as well. The class that I found to be the most engaging to me was understanding the legislative process. And I had hoped with like a second term that I was going to really become our liaison at the state level with legislation. But that is not to be. But what I found fascinating about the course, and I would recommend any of you take this one, is that it really laid out the exact steps that we need and also emphasized the influence that school boards can really have at the state level. Now, in Forest Hills, we have not had a legislative presence as far back as Mary said. She doesn't remember anything like that as well, but we absolutely are the kind of voice that districts around the state want to hear from. because there are districts who are always having to advocate for the very basic things. And then districts that feel much more comfortable feel like they don't need to be a presence there, and we are precisely the voices that they want to see. So I would, encourage you to take this course yourself, learn more about it, figure out who can be, our most active advocate on this board in the coming years. Let's see, I also attended a couple, lots of breakout sessions. There were a couple that I really stood out to me. One was on the Open Meetings Act specifically. And what I loved about the Open Meetings Act breakout session was it was a wonderful opportunity to hear from lawyers on precisely how to follow all the law to a T. I can report regardless of whatever kind of feedback we may be getting from outside sources. We are adhering to the Open Meetings Act laws. There is, ways in which we can adjust practices and still be within the law, but we are doing a fine job with adhering to the law itself. A nice thing is finding out what other schools are doing as well. That was a part of the breakout session, and how they handle their meetings and what the results of that are, and learning from mistakes from other districts and learning about successes as well. So I found that to be a really valuable one, especially when we're learning about how to handle miscommunications about the Open Meetings Act and how our meetings are run. And then I really personally, it's a personal subject to me, enjoyed the breakout session on trauma, learning about understanding trauma through NEAR, or neuroscience, epigenetics, ACEs, and resilience, and the impacts of trauma on our human bodies, but also our minds, in particular for students, how they are able to, or more specifically not able to process information when there's trauma to deal with. I found this actually to be a very positive session, because digging into the latest data, particularly on epigenetics, which at first was viewed as like, is this a pseudoscience? But now more time has gone into that. More studies have been done to find that cycle breakers exist and that it is actually possible to change what is almost nature in our systems for trauma with certain positive experiences. And then also that trauma itself, it's not the type of trauma that a person experiences that means that one trauma experience is better or worse, lighter or heavier than another, but the amount of time that a person spends in toxic stress situations. And so what is toxic stress for one student is going to be very different than it would be for another student or another person. And also to acknowledge that although it is quite overlooked, that we absolutely have a student population here in Forest Hills who are dealing with trying to learn through a history of toxic stress and trauma. And it's just really important that we address this, especially when we've had, national, planetary trauma in recent years, and the impacts that that's having on, an entire society, a whole community, not just the individual students. So I found that to be a fascinating breakout session.
Want me to go? Sure. So it's interesting, many of us were there for 4 days, and they divided the session up into general sessions, clinic sessions, and then CBA courses. And what's so neat is I was trying to figure out what to share with you all, is hearing Superintendent Kirby talk about this listen, lead, learn that he just went to, and how much these kids just want to be connected. Think about it, this Doc Brown, I think his name's Dr. Adolph Brown, he hosts the parent test on ABC. He was all about connecting with kids. And he used the analogy of a backpack. You don't know what's in people's backpacks. And some of his cool quotes that we were all scribbling feverishly were, rules don't govern behavior, relationships do. More is caught at first than is taught. And don't judge students by their exit. Don't judge students' exits by their entrance. So it's just neat to see that so much of their theme was about where we're at this point in life, and not reading, writing, arithmetic, but educate the whole child and make sure we watch out for them. So it's fun because the one session I went to that I was actually really excited about, and I know many of you have experience with this, I had never heard of it before or been a part of it, was capturing kids' hearts. And they are 100% aligned with our whole mantra of doing what's best for kids. And what was so heartwarming is the co-presenter was our own superintendent. So I would say we're all in very good hands, knowing that that's the way that we tick in this district, all of us at the table. Went to a couple CBA sessions, and gonna get on my soapbox a little bit. Please know how fun it is. CBA stands for Certified Board Members Awards Program. So the 9 CBA classes are to educate new board members on how to be good board members. So when you sit there and they go around the room and say, how many years have you been on the board? 6 months, 2 months, 8 months, 19 years. It's a little embarrassing, but what was so validating for me is it is really solid foundation to be able to equip all of us to really do the jobs we're meant to do. You heard about a couple of ones. They said it's finance, it's curriculum, it's legislation. I think I went to one on negotiations. We have no part of that, but to understand what our role is and how to feel comfortable ratifying a tentative agreement is very comforting. So here's the soapbox part. I first brought this, we went to our first conference in 2021, and this is what I read to everybody at the November meeting that year. The second thing I went to that was actually encouraged by our superintendent was an onboarding session, and I thought we do a great job onboarding. We have a very thorough, detailed, scheduled process where our new trustees meet with all of our cabinet members, our superintendent, with Val, with our board president, with other people. But it was neat to hear that validation through Fenton schools. And a couple of those things that you say, oh wow, that's cool. One, the reminder that we truly get all that done and put so much district effort into making sure that our trustees have had this orientation before they attend their first board meeting in January. So cool. Here was one of those things, fun to actually learn something. CBA 101 is the very first class that most of us have taken. What Fenton does is they ask other new trustees in their county if they would like to get together and all learn at the same table. It's very cool to do a class like that with other people in the room to bounce things off of each other, and how nice to do it with people that have similar demographics or similar trends or issues. So we have reached out to our other 19 cohorts in the ISD, and the answers are so comforting and warm and fuzzy. We have 28 new trustees in the ISD. That is a ton. So MASB is willing to do that. We will keep reporting back and forth to each other and see if maybe that can be something we can pull together. Northview's a yes. We have a couple in ours that are a yes. So a few more, maybe that would be a neat tradition to get into. But the reason that would be cool, to read the thing that I said I was going to read to you, is it time to think about how do we implement a practice or a policy change where that is something required from a professional development perspective by our own board. We heard all about professional development today for our own staff. Is there any reason we shouldn't be expecting that of ourselves? So Clarkston is the one, their board policy says, the board believes that the preparation of each board member for the performance of board duties is essential to the effective functioning of the board. This includes attending professional development classes and workshops in order to become a certified board member. It is the expectation of this board that its members shall become certified through the Michigan Association of School Boards Certified Board Member Award Program with a reasonable period of time. And then Northview, also in our ISD, also says that the Board of Education will seek the following products or end results of its work including level 1, CBA 101 to CBA 109, board certification achieved within the first half of their first term, executive limitations, blah, 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 blah. And as we said, Fenton does it too. So I hope you all will have that discussion at your organizational meeting or sometime soon and realize that, you know, being equipped to do your job correctly is a wonderful gift, and it makes it such a, I don't know, more satisfying, enjoyable way to do it. That's enough for me. Done with my soapbox. Thanks.
Awesome. Who else would like to go?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay.
Did you take that paper off your big pile, Mary?
I did. It was about this far down.
All right, so I went to CBA 102, which is Governing Through Policy. I like this course a lot. It was a good reminder about how policy works and why we operate by it as a school board. I just kind of jotted down a few one-liners that I thought were valuable and worth recapping. So first, just very obvious that at every board meeting, policy is enacted. With every motion that we pass, procedures will be implemented. Usually those are daily operating procedures that somebody else in the district is going to implement under the superintendent's watch. I thought a good clear statement of practice, just for everyone just to kind of always have in the back of their head. Sometimes we talk about a lot of things at once, and so it can get confusing to separate out some of these terms. Just that bylaws that we have as a board refer to the structure of our board and what we as the board do. So like, how do we run meetings? How do we divide up people into different committees? Those are our bylaws. And policy is what we want the district, all caps, the district to do, not us. And it's important to note that there is often a difference between a building policy and a district policy. I think the word policy gets used in a lot of different contexts, and that gets confusing. But a school might have a dismissal routine policy, or they might have a policy about, I mean, I don't know, like the list is endless, right? But that doesn't mean it's a district policy. District policies are what we ask the districts to enforce, but a building policy is gonna have a little bit more flexibility, and it can be easier to adjust as needed, where a district policy is not that easy to adjust on the fly. And then importantly, we talked a while about procedure and who is responsible for carrying out the procedures to put policy in play, and that is the district. And this I really thought was valuable, and I struggled with this a lot when I first joined the board. If we find ourselves as a board discussing how a policy is to be implemented, then a board is beginning to step into the role of the superintendent, and that is not good board governance. So in conclusion, the attorney who led this course wanted all of us to remember that the board creates the policy, the superintendent implements that policy, and then creates all the mechanisms for it to happen, and the board evaluates how it is working after it's been given a chance to actually work. So that was a 102, CBA 102.
Thank you.
And briefly, I got to attend quite a few as well. I took a break from the normal finance nerd topics. Well, I did attend those too, but I also went to I also went to some policy topics as well, which I liked. There was a school board policy hot topics session, which was legal and educator led opinions on both, on just some of the recent things that the districts across Michigan, across the country, have had to implement or have had brought their way. It was very encouraging to see how groups have handled them and how districts have followed the statutes that are in place for them to do, and when things get passed and put into place at the national level and at the state level. So it was good discussion to hear from multiple different views on some of that. And then the other one was interesting too. It was called Policy Remix, an innovative policy review. This was led by the Mount Pleasant Board of Education and Superintendent, and they were detailing how this was brought on by them wholesale changing policy providers, but then how they took that opportunity to make it part of their standing board meetings, where they would pick sections of their policies one by one by one by one, and have open discussion about them, and wordsmith them together and implement any changes that they felt could make them more specific to the Mount Pleasant School District and their students. They said that it added at least a cool hour to pretty much every one of their meetings. So I don't know that that's something that we look to do, but it was a very interesting way to see how they look at the detail in their policies, and it was good food for thought, certainly. So they were good. They were good classes both.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate everybody indulging me with that, because, like I said, it's nice to be able to hear a little bit about, and we don't, it's not like we go out and hang out and have dinner with each other all the time or anything, like to talk about these things. So it's nice to let everybody who else, people that weren't able to go this year, to hear some of the things that we learned, and hopefully you'll be able to attend next year.